You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have a special guest on our show. We're going to be talking to Eryilmaz and talking about his music projects and his story, because his story, he told me in the green room, it is a unique one. This music thing came later in life. So we're going to learn all about his life story and about his amazing music, his albums. He had recent albums from 2014, Daydream, and 2016 he had 57, and he is going to talk about Open Sesame. We're going to just have fun today. So Han, how you doing, first of all?
Well, I'm honored to be here, Shamaya. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk to the audience a little bit and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, as I told you in the, as you said, green room, I am not a musician by training. And my music story doesn't start with a sentence like I started to play music or compose music when I was 3, 5, 7. It came later in my life as a career. But music itself was always with me. I think from my very early years on, music was the setting in which my emotions manifested themselves. In terms of musicianship, I remember playing with my mother's knitting bars, arrange the pillows into a drum set. And as a little kid, I would find my mother's knitting bars wherever she hid them, take them out and play the drums to Beatles tunes or so. Of course, that caused them to bend, and my mother did not like that. But this air drumming sort of stayed with me throughout my adolescence, even into my adult years. Later, I remember finding the current music not satisfactory for me. And I'm talking about post-2000, say. And I realized that the way I liked music was pretty connected to my admiration of my music heroes, who were usually big arena bands like Journey and Foreigner and Styx and Toto and so on, or mysterious musicians like the Alan Parsons Project and so on. I really admired them, and not just because they were making good music, but I found them to be sort of leaders or opinion makers, role models in a way. And from my adulthood onwards, I noted that element in music was vanishing. Music became more and more an item of consumption. And the idols were being admired not because of their talents or musicianships or their being role models or heroes, but because they were famous. They received a lot of likes and they had many, many followers and so on. So this whole change, I think, in the music was, I'm not going to say it was a conscious thing, but maybe subconsciously it sort of gave me a push to dare to become a musician later in life. And it added a brand new dimension to my life, which makes me very, very happy. And I think every man, every person, man and woman, should try to become a musician in one way or another. And music should not be sort of the realm in which only trained musicians functioned. I think it should be something for all of us, and every one of us should try to be a musician or write a verse or two.
And once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio. We're talking to music artist Eryilmaz, and we want to know also where you're from, because we want to learn about your culture as well, because you're not from the United States right now, right?
Oh, I'm from Istanbul, Turkey. That's where I am right now. And I am Turkish nationality.
And what was the culture like? Because you touched a little bit on the process of being exposed to music and being ear drumming and all that good stuff. What was the culture like, though? What was the type of music that was popular where you were?
Oh, when I was growing up, that's... It's hard to say because it took Turkey some time to become globalized. I think that only happened after 1990s. My main source of knowledge of rock music, say, was the state radio, Channel 3. They had these shows hosted by DJs, and they not only played records, but they actually explained the records and the stories behind them, as well as the musicians behind them. So it was sort of a talk show kind of thing, like the one we're doing now. But it was music with depth, actually. So I learned to really wonder what or who was behind every record of, say, Moody Blues or Alan Parsons Project. And I waited to buy their next LP. And the first thing I did before I even put it on to listen was to read the sleeves, down to even the name of the driver that drove them and who was as much information as I could get. So I really loved the LPs, later CDs that came with a whole booklet with pictures, with lyrics, with information about anything, really. So my understanding of music was really connected deeply, intrinsically, with who made it and who helped make it. I think that's what I miss most of all now. I enjoy having the entire world of music in my, iPhone, but I can't find as much information as I really would like to have on the songs there. I guess this is one of the important factors for me in my understanding of music from my childhood all the way to here.
And moving forward with the music projects that you have currently, before we dive into those projects, what was the process like when you started to create music professionally? Because I know that was a process for you. What was that like, and what were some of the things that you learned along the way? Oh,
I learned everything along the way. When I started, I really didn't know anything about how to make or produce music. What we did was I had these two friends who were doctors, but one of them played the guitar and one of them played the bass. We were good friends, and we decided to rent a practice studio just to have fun in Istanbul next to Fenerbahce Stadium. I still remember. And since I knew air drumming, that made me the drummer of the trio. Well, it turned out I was, better than many expected with the drums. And we had a lot of fun. And at some point, we thought producing original tunes instead of just covering, In Excess or whatever. I think that was about 8 or 9 years ago. This became more and more serious for me because I thought I could continue with this, but my friends had other concerns. They had families, with kids and careers to follow. I made my living back then as well from the travel industry, but not having a family and kids probably gave me some room to continue. So the rest of the story actually is me trying to figure out how to produce music without having musicians in-house or in studio, learning how to use Pro Tools and editing and so on. The first album, Daydream, was really based on most of the stuff that we had sort of created as an idea in the studio back in those days.
And
that was back in 2014.
And you go under the alias of Barista. What was the story behind that name?
One of my passions is coffee. Back when I was, probably 20s or so, I had this idea of getting Starbucks license to Turkey. Back then, in Turkey, not everybody knew about espresso. And when you asked for coffee, they brought you either Turkish coffee or the instant coffee, Nescafe stuff. Although I made a dissertation on coffee and the history of coffee houses, and I learned that actually coffee and coffee houses originate in the way we know them today in Istanbul, in my native city. The earliest coffee house, the oldest coffee house, was opened here back in 1544. And it really was from here that the idea of coffee and coffee house was exported to Europe. And in Europe, it changed social conventions, really revolutionized the economy. I learned fascinating things, which I won't get into here. But I think in the subconscious area of my mind, this coffee thing was always there. And barista was a term that I learned dealing with Starbucks about this licensing thing. And during my travels to the U.S., in Turkey, nobody knew what it meant. Many thought it was some sort of a Latin thing, like a Latin music band type of thing. But my idea was to emphasize the part of a craftsman, the tailor, the artisan in the music that we were to make. So to me, barista was a coffee artisan, a craftsmanship rather than something that comes out of a factory. I think that the idea behind barista was to emphasize that this was really the type of music where we put a lot of creative energy and a lot of toil into making rather than just blooping something out of the computer.
If you're just now joining us for I Am Refocused Radio, we're talking to music artist Han Eryilmaz and talking about barista and the history of that, and that's a fascinating story. But barista, you have your third album, Open Sesame, and this album has 26 songs on it?
Yes, it will have 26 tracks on it, released in 5 volumes.
And what was the process of choosing the songs? Because this was something in the making of a few years, correct?
Correct, about 3 years.
How did you choose the songs? Did you just say, okay, this one's good enough, that one's good enough, or what was the story behind that?
I don't think I thought too deeply about it. I just wanted stuff to keep coming. And I chose these 26 out of, I think, more than 40 tracks that were recorded. A big step in the making of these tracks was when I contacted Simon Phillips, and he agreed to be a part of the project. Simon is my idol in music. I can't really describe here how excited I was when he said yes. So with that, the project, which was in its embryonic stages, in better words, the ideas were there, but executing them, putting them into recording was in its embryonic stages. So with that, the project moved pretty much to Ojai, California, to Carbonite Studios. Simon introduced me to Jesse Siebenberg, who actually is the son of Bob Siebenberg, who was a part of one of my all-time icon bands, Supertramp. And I also reached out to Rudiger for the vocals. And this became the core of the following part of the project. Also worked with some female singers that I've known from before, like Sarah Ezreal and Lydia Salnikova, Lina, as well as some friends here over in Turkey. So the recordings were made as also here in Istanbul in the studios here, especially the vocal recordings. And we put them all together in Carbonite Studios in Ojai, and Jason Mariani mixed and mastered them. Of course, this took some time because you also have to deal with life. COVID came, and in my travel industry, there were a lot of problems and a big dive in the industry, so on and so forth. But luckily, most everything was ready at the end of 2020. And Monoplay Records, which is a local indie music label here in Istanbul, my good friend Arda there agreed to release it. So with them, we put everything together and came out with the first volume of Open Sesame back in April, and Her Dress. The arrangement of the volumes was done, I did it with mostly in reference to the subgenre of the records, as well as some togetherness of the themes of these songs. And I thought instead of releasing a huge album with 26 tracks, releasing them in parts was more current of an idea. I did not do that with the previous albums, with Daydream and 57. They came with 16 and 17 relatively tracks. And they also were released in CD form. So I think Open Sesame is in more in sync with the current standards of the music industry. And the next volume we are planning to release on the 4th of June.
Yeah, that's awesome, because Barista, if you want to find it on Spotify, you can find it there and other platforms. But the fact that you're releasing these in volumes is pretty awesome, because it's like a journey for the listener. Like, they're going to be like, oh, Netflix, can't wait for the next series to come out. But
I'm hoping that to be the case, yes.
But when you are in this music journey, before we let you go today, you mentioned the COVID situation and the pandemic. How did you stay? It's always been my question for the creative artists out there. How did you manage to stay focused on your goals and stay positive despite the chaos that's basically been going on basically globally?
I think managing the uncertainty is the key here. We all need certainty to move on. We really can't handle without knowing what we will be doing in the future. I told myself that this wasn't really the worst of the evils that one could endure in life. I told myself, what if I was born in the year 1895? And what if I was one of the generation that saw endless wars throughout their lives, followed by famines and all kinds of calamities and pandemics and so on. So, I mean, compared to what can happen, this is not all that bad. Hopefully it'll be over before long. Of course, the lack of information about the real cause of this and, where this is going and so on, it's difficult to handle. It's a lot more difficult for families with kids. But this could also be a useful thing for many of us. It gives us a chance to just stop this madness that our lives had become, this big rush from this to that. Gives us a little quietude and a chance to really look inward and to really evaluate what our lives consist of, so that we could keep a check on them.
And once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio, talking to Han Eryilmaz. And his life story, being creative, and his amazing barista and his songs and his story. Before we let you go, talk to our audience. What would you say to someone who listens to this and they're from where you are and they want themselves to get into the music and create songs? What words of wisdom would you give to that person if they're listening right now?
Technically, it's a lot easier than it ever was. The difficult part is to find a spot, I think, that others will see in it. But the most important thing about it is that it should appeal to the person who's making music the most. As long as it becomes a part of your life that you find fulfillment in, rather than an element of recognition that you keep pushing for others to become aware of your existence or send you likes, I think you can only benefit from that, and it will enrich your lives.
Once again, true honor having Han Eryilmaz right here on I Am Refocused Radio. We want to thank you for being on the show today. And for everyone who wants to listen to the show, go to iamrefocusedradio.com. You can find us everywhere. Find us on your favorite podcast platform. And once again, Han, thank you for being on the show today, sir.
My pleasure and my honor. Thank you for having me.
And like we say on every single show on I Am Refocused Radio, keep God first, stay focused, and peace. Hey, it's Shemai Reed with I Am Refocused Radio. Make sure you go to iamrefocusedradio.com to listen to today's episode. Once again, like we always say, keep God first, stay focused, and peace.